And this is the Rob Kall Bottom Up Radio Show, WNJC 1360 AM, sponsored by opednews.com and futurehealth.org. Check out other podcasts at www.opednews.com/podcasts with an S and futurehealth.org/podcasts, or search iTunes podcasts for my name, Rob Kall. My guest tonight is Arianna Huffington. Arianna was just featured on the cover of Forbes magazine as one of the 100 most powerful women in the world. Technorati ranks her website, Huffington Post, as the #1 blog in the world. Mediaite ranks Arianna just second after the editor of the New York Times as the most influential editor. Welcome to the show, Arianna.
Thank you so much. It's really great to be with you, and I love your focus on bottom-up solutions.
Well, thank you. So you've just come out with a new book, Third World America, and I have to say it's a fabulous book that I read when I'm working out, and it was really easy to kind of pump a little extra while I was reading this because it really gets you mad. There's a lot in here about just how we are becoming a third world nation and moving in where the middle class is in big trouble and things are not looking good. You've done an awful lot of work in putting this together. I have to congratulate you on it.
Thank you so much. I really wanted to do this book because as an immigrant to this country, I really believe in the American dream. I experienced it. I've seen so many people, so many immigrants who came to this country to find it, experience it, and here we are now seeing a real assault on the middle class. The dream is crumbling, and what used to be at the heart of the American dream, upward mobility, has now become downward mobility.
You have a quote in here that there's nobody advocating for the or lobbying for the American dream, something along those lines. I like that line.
Yes. We have plenty of lobbyists undermining the American dream every day.
Yes. Now, you write in the beginning of the book, my goal for this book is to sound the alarms so that we never do become third world America. And you say if we don't correct our course, we could become a third world nation. Think Mexico or Brazil, where the wealthy live behind fortified gates, a place that failed to keep up with history. We could become, and that we won't be taken down by a foreign enemy, but by the avarice of our corporate elite and the neglect of our elected leaders. That's some scary stuff. And what you do in this book is you document it in so many different areas of our life and our nation.
Yeah, what I wanted to do is to provide the data, but also to tell the stories, because sometimes the data don't really bring the emotion that we need to create a sense of urgency. I can tell you that there are 26 million people unemployed or underemployed, that 3 million homes are going to be foreclosed this year. I can tell you all that, but in the end, it's the stories that drive it home. It's writing about Dean Blackburn, who grew up in Minnesota, brought up by a single mom who was a teacher, worked hard, got into Yale, had solid jobs in technology for 17 years, then lost his job 2 years ago and can't get another job. The reason I started with this story in Chapter 1 is because here is somebody who is educated, who has a job not in a collapsing manufacturing industry but in high tech, and he is in trouble too. So we see that across the board, and yet that sense of urgency that was very present in Washington when we wanted to save Wall Street is not at all present when it comes to saving the middle class.
Yeah, this is something you've talked about Obama's loss of a sense of urgency, particularly with foreclosures, it seems.
Yes, well, foreclosures is actually a case study for what went wrong. The failure to pass cram-down legislation, which would have prevented over 1 million families from losing their homes. I mean, can you imagine what we are talking about here? And to allow the banks to win that one after they had brought the economy to near collapse, it shows just how dysfunctional and broken our system has become.
And you have a couple chapters. You have one chapter on infrastructure that just walks us through all the different ways that our system is just breaking down and falling behind. You've got a section in it called the Flintstones versus the Jetsons, describing how America is nickel and diming its way into the future. And then you list our water supply, our bridges, our roads, our educational system, and how each time we're spending a fraction of what we need to just to keep things fixed, not to improve them.
Well, exactly, and we had a demonstration of that in San Bruno recently, when pipes that had not been properly maintained ended up exploding, killing people and destroying homes. That is really what we are dealing with across the country. We could have hundreds of San Brunos, and here is really where the betrayal is coming into place. If we were a full employment economy, we would still need to do something about our infrastructure. Imagine now that we have unemployment almost at double-digit levels, how desperately we need a real infrastructure policy, rebuilding our infrastructure, which would also have the additional advantage of creating jobs that cannot be outsourced and helping all our local industries. Yet
we didn't see it happen. Hardly any of the money that went into TARP went to it, and even the money that was dedicated to it wasn't all spent, right?
Well, what's happening is that the stimulus bill clearly had the desired effect of making sure that things didn't get worse. But we saved some jobs, we created some jobs, but it wasn't enough. So the problem is that it was an inadequate response to the crisis. And as Lloyd George, the British Prime Minister, said, you cannot jump across a chasm in 2 leaps.
Good line. By the way, I got to say, I have a quotation website and built a quotation database for op-ed news, and your stuff you're very quotable. I got to say it. I've got more cues next to quotable lines in this book. You're competing with Jesse Jackson.
That's sweet. I like that.
Well, it's good stuff. You talk not just about the disintegrating infrastructure, and like you just mentioned, but also the need to expand. And one of the areas that you say is the most important is education. And you mentioned the new movie that's just out. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I write about the release of Waiting for Superman, which basically, in a very evocative, powerful way, connects us to the crisis in education. And we all know that, again, our public schools are failing our children. There are many good public schools, but there are also many dysfunctional public schools. We all know that there are many phenomenal teachers, but also there are teachers who cannot teach, who nevertheless have tenure and continue to teach children. And, we have this phenomenon where only 1 in 2,500 teachers is ever fired, and compared to 1 in 37 or 1 in 67 lawyers and doctors. So clearly there is something askew here. And we have not again brought that sense of urgency that Jeffrey Canada, who is turning lives around in Harlem, is bringing into the movie. And when you see the lottery that takes place in the movie for children to be able to leave their dysfunctional public schools and go to a decent public charter school nearby, you see that the middle-class American dream has become a game of chance, literally.
Well, it's interesting because just a couple of weeks ago I interviewed John Taylor Gatto, who was an award-winning, the Best Teacher of the Year for New York City and then New York State. And he wrote a couple books about how schools dumb us down. And you described the same thing, how the history of American education comes from the Prussian educational model, preparing students to be obedient soldiers and compliant citizens. And that's what our schools are still working to do. And really, what you talk about is how they really have to drastically change. And just doing that anymore is no good for America. So where should it go?
Well, first of all, we need to acknowledge that right now we cannot possibly continue to fail our children. I mean, we need to all agree that what passed as education reform, the Leave No Child Behind Act, was really a sham. It was exactly a bipartisan coming together that did not address the problem. And that's what our system is capable of producing, it appears, just bipartisan shams. So now we need to really challenge those who stand in the way. If teachers' unions stand in the way because of tenure, that needs to be addressed. And I think the president is doing some really good things here. The race to the top is a really good step forward. We see a real tipping point here. The parents are organizing. The movie is capturing people's attention. And really, the movie is incredibly pro-teacher. We need to make that very clear. It just acknowledges that we need to separate the good teachers from those who need to find another different job.
I think that applies in so many different areas. You talked about the economists in Obama's White House saying talking about our financial crisis with them is like beaming back to the 2nd century and discussing astronomy with Ptolemy. What do you think about the changes that are happening in the White House now?
Well, they're good changes. I like the fact that Larry Summers is no longer, or will soon not be, the chief economic advisor, because Larry Summers, a brilliant man, is unfortunately somebody whose view of the world is entirely Wall Street centric. And that's why once Wall Street was saved, he really convinced the president that the rest would follow. We got Wall Street out of the woods. And that was the problem, that they underestimated the crisis in Main Street. But right now, frankly, what is happening in Washington is not going to change fundamentally in the next few months. I mean, no dramatic, bold proposals are going to come out of Washington of the kind I'm suggesting in the book, like a payroll tax holiday, huge infrastructure projects. So while we are pressuring the government to do the right thing, what I'm saying is that we need to have some of your bottom-up solutions. And they're all over the country. They are happening. People are taking matters in their own hands. People are innovating. People are actually creating their own jobs instead of applying for jobs, like Etsy.com. I don't know if you've been there.
Sure.
But there are a lot of people who are practicing their crafts, bartering with each other in Swap.com, using social media to innovate, to connect with each other, and to help each other. One of my favorite examples in the book is the case of Seth Reams, who lost his job in Portland, Oregon as a concierge. He recognized that the one thing he had in abundance was time, so he started a site called we'vegottimetohelp.org. And ever since I've been talking about him and including him in the book, he started getting a tremendous amount of emails and letters from around the country from people asking if he could help in their cities and towns. Over 50 cities now want to launch branches of We've Got Time to Help.
Now, I just want to point out that when you put this book together, you really did it with both head and heart. I like to quote a saying from Oliver Wendell Holmes Sr. that sometimes the head steals the heart's best blood, particularly for writers. And you really put it together because you throw a chapter together. You really put a solid chapter together based on statistics and analysis and discussion, and then you balance it with an anecdote of somebody who's actually living through what you've described with statistics. And you did a great job of that throughout the book. Really like it. Now, going to bottom up, because that's what the show's about. You say in the book, in this time of economic hardship, political instability, and rapid technological change, empathy is the one quality we most need if we're going to flourish in the 21st century. And you mentioned somewhere in the book, you wrote a book a while back called The Fourth Instinct, which is about connections. I think that we're shifting from an information economy to a connection economy, and I think that you're helping make it happen. And I'm doing a transition from talking about the book to talking about Huffington Post, because I really believe that what you've done with Huffington Post is create a really cutting-edge media operation that is changing the ground rules for everybody, and everybody's got to look at what you're doing to see how things are done. Like your new divorce section, you gradually, it seems like you're rolling out one by one new dimensions of our lives to explore as a news angle that is not done elsewhere.
Well, thank you for saying that. First of all, I completely agree with you that we are moving to a connection economy. And I believe actually that there is something in the zeitgeist that is about connection. Jonas Salk, before he died, told me that we are moving from Epoch A to Epoch B. And he saw Epoch A as based on competition and survival, and Epoch B as based on collaboration and what he called a sort of meaning-based life. And we're seeing that. We're seeing that in the people who are connecting with each other to do good. B. Stone said that Twitter is a triumph of humanity, not a triumph of technology. Now, this is clearly still an aspirational statement. It's not yet a triumph of humanity, but it can be. So can Facebook. That's the kind of future that we can work for, and in order to get there, we have to make sure that we each do our part in the real world, as well as accelerating the sort of the positive contagion in the virtual world.
And you're certainly leading the way there. There's a new article out, one that lists you as one of the top 100 powerful women in the world. And it gives some pretty good in-depth information about Huffington Post. It says you have 186 employees now. I'm curious, how many of them are there to do site architecture or software or web design?
Well, basically, of almost 90, I think between 86 and 90, we just made some new hires, are basically editors and reporters, and the rest are working on our technology and also on our marketing and advertising. You're doing some very innovative, creative, new things there too. It looks like integrating with Facebook and tying together people. It just amazes me what you're doing with that. Is there a star you have there who does that, or is it a secret, or? We have a great senior team. We have Greg Coleman, who came from Yahoo, where he was head of sales. He heads our advertising team. Paul Berry heads our technology team. So we have a really good senior team. And the important thing, as you know, is to constantly see ourselves as a work in progress, to keep adopting while remaining true to our DNA.
Now, you've got 6,500 bloggers. That's incredible. And so many of them are such famous people. I kind of refer to your platinum Rolodex there that you have. That has
well, you're one of our. We love having you cross-post what you are doing on your site.
Well, thank you. Op-Ed News is a small site that has a tiny fraction of what yours does, but we've got our people and our
you do great work,
vision.
and I think one of the things we like to do is to cross-post good things and just basically expand the reach of the good work being done in different fields. As you said, we're launching divorce on November 2nd, which was Nora Ephron's idea, because as I know, having been divorced, it affects people in very deep ways, and we all need to discuss how do you parent after divorce, how do you date after divorce, all these things, and having an engaged community discuss these issues can only help.
And, you say in the book, our slide into third world America may not be televised, but it will be blogged, tweeted, posted on Facebook, covered with a camera phone, and uploaded to YouTube. And by shining the spotlight on it, you might be able to preserve it. That's part of what...
We might be able to prevent it.
Prevent it. That was right. I typed it in. I got it wrong. Prevent it. So you're doing incredible things. You've reached heights that are pretty amazing. What are your visions for how you'd like Huffington Post to make a difference? And how is it making a difference in your eyes in changing the media and changing the world and changing politics?
Well, I believe that we're living through a very dangerous transition moment. And we have, as we always do in times of economic anxiety, a lot of forces that have been unleashed that appeal to the worst in us. So it is now up to us to also do whatever we can to appeal to the best in us, to the better angels of our nature. And that's where working at the grassroots level, giving back is absolutely critical. Because unfortunately, when this destructive, demonizing force is unleashed, they are not susceptible to logic. But we can unleash these forces of empathy and engagement that we were talking about, and that's the way to make sure that we rebuild America and prevent it from becoming a third world country.
Now, Huffington Post has evolved from at first being a lot of politics to now politics being less and less. So some say it's 20% of your content, and you've got lots of things on entertainment and what have you. How do you respond to people who criticize that, and how do you think that fits into this vision of yours of making a difference and helping to find the higher angels?
Well, I'm profiling a lot of people who do that, and they range from unemployed people like Seth Reams or unemployed people whose skills, lawyers, accountants who are helping others prevent foreclosure, to very wealthy people like Susie Buffett, Warren Buffett's daughter, whom I write about in a section called Find Your Own Calcutta, who is using her money to rebuild Omaha, her hometown. Whenever a problem occurs, whether it's a library shutting down or preschool program shutting down, she's there to help. And I feel that this is just something for us to focus on. Instead of constantly focusing on our deficits and our shortages, to focus on our surpluses, the surplus of skills, the surplus of time, and the surplus of resources that we do have but we are not using. Okay.
You've got an offer to give people a ride on the bus, the HuffPost Sanity Bus.
If there is anybody going from New York to Washington, the Huffington Post is offering buses.
Wow. And there's a deadline on that?
Over 11,000 people have signed up.
Oh, my God, 11,000. That's fabulous. Amazing.
I hope maybe you'll come join us.
I'm in the Philadelphia area. You going to send any from Philly?
Well, who knows? Maybe that's the next thing.
It would be a lot of fun to go that way. Did you go to the one last weekend?
No, unfortunately, I was in Los Angeles.
Now you've moved to New York. Did I understand that right?
I'm back and forth. I haven't moved, but my daughters are both now in college. So I'm back and forth, especially since our office is in New York. But anyway, I really hope that that you will come and visit us at the Huffington Post office in Soho.
I would love to do that. Thanks so much. You promised
so
me
much,
30
and
minutes.
Thank you for all you're doing.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.